Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Mad Meta Magic, where we try to make the magic meta mad. One of the decks that was requested and put in queue was Blue Tron, and the stipulation was that I play the particular build of Blue Tron that this person requested. And I said, as long as it's not the version that put me on tilt, that's fine. So, this is Dave's build from the Discord, and yeah. We'll see how it does. I don't know how good Blue Tron is in the current metagame, but we're going to find out. So let's take this into a constructed league. One moment while I obtain the necessary tickets to do this. Alrighty, I will see you all in round one. Alrighty, round one, here we go. Alright, well this hand is almost good. Unfortunately, we do not have a blue source. If we had a waste, an island instead of this wastes, I think it'd be great, but we're going to mulligan. The Eternal Wastes causing us issues. I could keep this just based off the fact that we could play a Chalice on one. I think I'm going to mulligan now. Dave, I know you're playing a wastes because we're playing like Thought-Knots and Spatial Contortion out of the board, but come on, man. It needs to be an island. Alright, well, we're going to keep this. We're going to put two cards back, so we're going to put back Thirst for Knowledge and Tormod's Crypt. Let's go. Your Talisman of Dominance can be your colorless land, your colorless source. Oh, man. I think Blue Tron generally needs to play about, I think it's about 6 blue sources, and I think right now I only have 4 untapped blue sources. What is wrong with my webcam? I didn't even move. I have to like go through all these sub-menus just to get it to re-autofocus. Well, alright then. I think it has to do with the filter that I currently have on. Opponent takes Thought-Knot rather than Talisman. That means that they don't... whatever deck they're playing probably doesn't have good answers to Thought-Knot in particular. So, start Blast Zone, pass the turn. We can't hold up Remand until turn 3. And if this is Rakdos mid-range, odds are Remand is not going to be a very good spell versus the kinds of cards they're going to cast. They exile Bloodstained Mire out of their own grave to draw because they took a non-creature spell. We draw another Remand. Play Wastes. Okay. It looks like we might be against 8-Rack. Do I have the Foiling Shimmer turned on? It kind of looked like I did. That was weird. Play Academy Ruins, pass the turn. I could crack Blast Zone if I need to. This could be like Smallpox, this could be Rakdos midrange, this could be Mardu something or other. Alright, we untap. We draw Thirst for Knowledge, which is a good draw here. I could Thirst and try and hit a land, but if I don't hit an untapped blue land, we're in trouble. So I'm going to wait. We're just going to leave up Remand for now. My opponent plays a Blood Moon. Does that matter? I'm not sure that this matters, actually. Because we're probably not assembling Tron for a long time. This doesn't really take us off of our utility lands. I'm going to let Blood Moon resolve. And I'm going to Remand whatever they follow this up with, or I'm going to cast Thirst for Knowledge. So, like, losing access to Blast Zone might be important, but, Thirst for Knowledge. We will discard an artifact, and it is Sundering Titan. We untap. We draw a Field of Ruin. Play the field. Let's take a look at our sideboard really quick. The only thing I could wish for in play is like a Chalice on 0 or a Relic of Progenitus. I think it's more important to hold up Remand here than it is to try and play out this Karn. If we can get to 1 more mana, then playing Karn is really good. And I know my opponent probably is playing a deck full of hand hate, and maybe it's correct to just jam Karn, but jamming Karn into a Lightning Bolt and a threat would be terrible. And like Remand is not that great of a line here either. I think it's just better. So we'll see what happens. Alright, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play a mountain. They play a Chandra, and that's getting remanded. We need to draw an island. We draw Karn. 26 lands. Not only can we not draw islands, we can't draw lands. Okay, there's a land. So play an Urza's Power Plant. Now we can play Karn. Leaving up Remand is more powerful here, if and only if my opponent doesn't have another land. So what we're going to do is we're going to wish for Sorceress Spyglass and name Chandra Torch of Defiance. That way, I mean, it sucks if my opponent has an Abrade, but they have Dreadbore, Fatal Push, Chandra. So we name Chandra Torch of Defiance. If you're an extremely good Magic player, and this is not everybody, but a lot of pros will fit into this category. If you are a very good Magic player, Pithing Needle should be a strictly better Sorceress Spyglass for you. With the exception of, like, occasionally you're going to run into players playing some real jank. But in like, a standard metagame, you're going to know what to name with Pithing Needle based on how your opponent's playing and what they could possibly have. And in that regard, it's just a half-price Sorceress Spyglass. Plus, I think Pithing Needle can name lands. I guess this can name lands too, but... Alright, now that my opponent has used their Dreadbore, we're going to wish for a Liquimetal Coating. And play that. I could wait until next turn and leave up Remand. That doesn't save me from a Dreadbore or a Lightning Bolt. So I think it's better to just temporarily shut off one of my opponent's swamps. So stop on my opponent's upkeep, shut off a swamp. Opponent plays a Magmatic Channeler and a land. We untap, we draw Condescend, so turn off a swamp, blow it up. Now I could just repeal this Channeler here and deny them the extra card draws, and I think I'm going to do that. Because Karn is outside of bolt range, I don't mind cantripping if I can hit a land here. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Alright, pass the turn. I think the only reason we're winning, though, is because my opponent kept a hand that was very bad against us. It was a bunch of lands and fatal pushes. Opponent replays Magmatic Channeler. I can't Condescend this. Well, I mean, I guess I can. Force my opponent to tap out of a lot of their mana. Otherwise, I can just remand and get a card draw here. I'm going to remand. Make them replay it again. We get another land, which is good. Alright. Now that we have multiple blue, I can actually Snapcaster Repeal on that Channeler, or I can cast Cyclonic Rift. So we're going to shut off the swamp, blow it up. I guess I could have gotten a Sundering Titan or something here, but... Do I Cyclonic Rift, or do I Snapcaster Repeal? I think I actually Snapcaster Repeal here, and this is my logic. If I could overload Cyclonic Rift, but if I do, I'll put Blood Moon back in their hand and give them black mana again. This doesn't let me hold up a counter spell, but I don't feel like I'm going to need one. And we're pretty close to just completely winning the game with Karn anyway. I think getting the draw now is better. Let's see, take a look at my sideboard again. Yeah. At that point, we're just going to win. So, cool. Not sure that that last bit really mattered, but it could have. So I guess in this scenario, we do want Aether Gust, because if there's a reason we need to get rid of Blood Moon, we can use Aether Gust to do so in addition to what we normally would. Yeah, the 4 islands here are really, really kind of hurting. I think it's technically better than a Remand. Remand versus my opponent's deck in the general sense is going to be pretty bad. I think Spreading Seas is actually going to be better. So I'm going to cut down to 1 Remand, and we'll keep the 2 Spreading Seas. I don't think bringing in Spatial Contortion is necessary, but Dismember might be because it can kill Magmatic Channeler. What would I cut for that? Like an Engineered Explosives or maybe a Chalice? I'm not used to playing Mono Blue Tron. I think we're just going to try it like this. We might find that we're lacking answers to permanence on board, though. Alrighty, game 2. Alright, well we have some basic islands and a Condescend, and 2 Tron lands, so I think this is worth keeping. The good news is Blue Tron is more resilient to Blood Moon than Green Tron is, in my experience, simply because Blue Tron doesn't have to assemble Tron to win. It's just like a scenario under which you become extremely advantaged. This hand would have been really, really not ideal if my opponent just started off like Thoughtseize, especially if we top deck nothing. But starting basic island does feel good. My opponent not playing anything and giving us time to set up a potential Condescend here is very nice. I know it's not as good, but I'm kind of surprised to see that the Blue Tron lists that currently exist don't run Spell Burst anymore. Simply because Spell Burst is such a powerful effect, but it makes sense if you think about it. Considering that opponent plays Liliana, that's not something we can allow to resolve. Like, Spell Burst is good when your opponent plays 1 spell every turn. And, do I keep Spreading Seas? I don't think I keep Treasure Mage. Maybe I keep Treasure Mage because we have Talisman of Dominance. I'm going to keep Treasure Mage. But Spell Burst is good when your opponent is playing like 1 big spell a turn, because then you can just counter their big spell every turn and keep them locked out of the game. But nobody plays 1 big spell anymore. The fact that we have like a dominant kind of like heavy mid-range strategy in all the Uro decks means that your opponent, like, if you're not doing that, then your only recourse is to play as many spells as quickly as possible in an attempt to overwhelm your opponent with aggro and try and win early. So, yeah, I guess Spell Burst is not as good, even though it is a hard counter, and the rest of the counters that Blue Tron plays are soft counters. I think this is definitely a time to get Wurmcoil Engine. Wurmcoil Engine is a threat that is difficult for my opponent to answer unless they Thoughtseize it. Okay, opponent plays a Mountain. This could be a Chandra, Torch of Defiance, which would suck. Okay, it is a Seasoned Pyromancer. Let's see what my opponent discards. Kroxa and a Swamp. Okay. Well, I can't stop my opponent from playing Kroxa, even if I had kept Spreading Seas. We get a Remand. So, play a Tower. Play a Talisman. We could Remand a Blood Moon and then land Wurmcoil next turn, which would feel pretty good here. We could also Remand a Kroxa if my opponent, like, fetch land bolts into... Okay, Liliana. I am going to Remand Liliana, simply because my opponent can't replay it. My opponent attacks with Seasoned Pyromancer, and I'm going to keep Treasure Mage around. Seasoned Pyromancer itself is not a big threat. Okay, another Condescend is great. It would be even better if I had Tron assembled here. So the question now is, do we play Wurmcoil or do we play Thought-Knot? If I play Thought-Knot, I can potentially deprive my opponent of a threat, so I could take Liliana out of their hand at, like, worst. In the best case scenario, I could grab something scarier than that, because the repeated discard is not what's going to matter, but the Edict effect from Liliana might. We're not going to Condescend anything, because my opponent doesn't play 5 or 6 drops. They basically curve out at 4 for Escape Kroxa. We could take, like, a Dreadbore, or maybe if my opponent has, like, an Exile and Artifact effect. I don't think red really does that, because it's not like if people play, like, what is it, Shattering Blow or whatever it's called. So we're going to play an island, and we're going to try playing Thought-Knot Seer. Condescend, we could at least scry and set up another draw. Wurmcoil Engine is probably what I should have played, though. Because if my opponent has a Thoughtseize effect, and they just take Wurmcoil, we're going to be in trouble. So we'll see how this shakes out. This does at least give me some good information here, while my opponent still has cards in hand. So they have Dreadbore, they have Angrath's Rampage, they have Hazaret the Fervent, and they have Liliana. Dreadbore's annoying. Angrath's Rampage is kind of targeted, but we have enough permanents that Angrath's Rampage is not that great. Hazaret is impossible for us to answer otherwise, unless we, like, Cyclonic Rift and put everything back in their hand. My opponent can next turn play Liliana, Edict, and then Dreadbore or Angrath's Rampage to kill Thought-Knot. This is kind of a tough hand. They don't have any lands, so if they try and play 2 spells, we can Condescend the second one. I think we take Hazoret here, because otherwise this game is going to end too quickly. And the attack here is free, so we're going to go ahead and attack for 2. Alright, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They start with Dreadbore Thought-Knot, okay? They get to draw. If they don't play a land and they try and slam Liliana, that would be the best case scenario for us. They attack us for 3. We go down to 15. Okay, opponent cracks Bloodstained Mire. Gets a Swamp. They're thinking about it. And opponent clings to dust, Condescend, yep. They get to draw. Oh, they drew Thoughtseize, and we can't counter it. I think in this scenario, we do actually Condescend and try and set up a new threat. Opponent played around Condescend pretty masterfully there. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll play 7. We want Ugin, because Ugin will pretty much end the game if he comes down. Hopefully, between Liliana and the other discards... Oh, actually, I needed to put that land under Ugin or over Ugin. Over Ugin was slightly better. That was actually a mistake for the scry there. Because if my opponent plays Liliana, they can force us to discard a land so we don't discard Ugin. And then, yeah. Crap. Was it Power Plant I just shifted to the bottom? I didn't actually look. It was like completely not in my brain at all. Which is terrible. So we draw Ugin. We'll play out River of Tears. Pass the turn. Oh, and the problem is, my opponent still has Angrath's Rampage. Okay, my opponent plays Liliana. Just make a sack. Come on. We're holding 2 lands. Yes! Alright, cool. Opponent hits us for 3. The problem is next turn they could, like, Rampage, land, play Kroxa, and then we would be in trouble. Oh, no. Now I have to top deck 2 lands. Alright, well, I mean, Blast Zone is a land. We're going to play Wastes just in case my opponent did keep Blood Moon. But I have to top deck another untapped land for this to work. Actually, no, I can't. I'm going to lose. Because my opponent can just uptick Liliana, reanimate Kroxa, and we're then Hellbent. So, I did misplay. Not by a ton, but I think enough to lose. Which, by some people's definition, is a ton. I misplayed a ton. So here comes Kroxa to make us discard Ugin. That Angrath's Rampage, though. Opponent was like, you know, he might have an Ugin and need 8 mana exactly. Oh, brutal. Yup, there's Kroxa. We discard Ugin. So what would be good here? We'd need to top deck like Karn Great Creator and get Ensnaring Bridge. Well, that's not it, so we're gonna go ahead and concede. Maybe on the play, Remand is actually good. What would it be better than? I think I'm actually not going to bring in Spreading Seas. I think Remand is going to be slightly better. Only bring 2 back in. Alright, try it like this. I still don't really want Dismember or Spatial Contortion here, because it doesn't kill their biggest threats, and their average threats are not that big. So we'd like to play first. We have Mine, Power Plant. There's the potential for Tolaria West for Tower. We have Condescend. Okay, I'm going to keep, but I think I'm going to play out Tolaria West. I don't think Transmuting is really on the table here. Pass the turn. If my opponent does not start Hand Hate, we're going to just, we're not going to play Talisman of Dominance. If my opponent Thought Seizes or Inquisitions and takes Condescend, then obviously we'll play Talisman and hope to top deck something. Unless they take Talisman and then just play around Condescend for the rest of the game. Or until it's no longer relevant. And I think what they take here is dependent on what they have in hand. If they have a bunch of cheap redundant spells, they'll just take Talisman and try and prevent us from accelerating. If they have stuff they want to play only on curve, they're going to take Condescend. Which, of course, we don't have a lot of other choices to make because we have all lands in our hands. So, yeah, okay. So that's indicative that my opponent either has a bunch of cheap stuff that they want to keep playing, or that they have a Blood Moon in hand. Or they have another piece of Hand Hate, and it's not going to matter. Okay, opponent Thought Seizes. So we are going to Condescend here and see if our opponent pays for it. They pay for it. They think we drew something good. So at the very least, we do get to draw. I could Expedition Map for an island if they play Blood Moon, or a Tron land if they don't. So I'm going to keep Expedition Map on top. Opponent sees we're holding all lands, so they can't take anything and they lose some life. We'll play a Power Plant, play an Expedition Map, pass the turn. And if they play Blood Moon, we get an island. Now the interesting thing here is if my opponent does something like a Braid or Angrath's Rampage, what do we tutor for? And I think in that scenario, we still go for an island. The fact that they fetched a basic tells me this is Blood Moon. So Expedition Map, we get an island. And I know you're thinking like, oh, Kano, but why didn't you just leave the island on top if you were expecting your opponent to play Blood Moon? And the answer to that question is because I had no idea what they were going to play, and this left me with the most options and ability to react. So second Expedition Map here can get us another island. Once again, my opponent appears to have kept a hand that is not very good versus Mono Blue Tron, but we're also not top decking very well. Mono Blue Tron, you kind of want to pressure early if you can, because it's kind of a big tempo deck. Now, Bone Crusher Giant does pressure us pretty hard. My opponent only has a single black mana, so we don't really have to worry about like Kroxa too much or anything like that. Thinner deck, get an island. Actually, maybe you should have gotten a Wastes there. But I don't think it's going to matter too much. We'll go ahead and pass. So we remand anything that can't recast or anything that uses a single black. Alright. Opponent attacks for 4. We go down to 16. They play Magmatic Channeler. We are going to remand because we could draw another counterspell or a Thirst for Knowledge. Thirst for Knowledge there would have been quite good, but we just didn't get it. So come on, Wurmcoil Engine. Okay. We didn't get the Wurmcoil Engine. Play the Power Plant because I know they've seen that card. The question now is, do we play Karn? Opponent knows we've been on lands for a while now. They've Thoughtseized us twice. If we play Karn and we wish for Ensnaring Bridge now, we can't play it, and Karn will die. If we wait one turn, my opponent may be disinclined to try and Thoughtseize us again, and we can play it all in one turn. It's irrelevant if they have Angrath's Rampage or another removal spell. I think we wait. We actually wait a turn here. Because the upside is high, and the downside is effectively the same. So, take 4, go to 12. Opponent hits Magmatic Channeler and Chandra. So they play Chandra. They uptick into a Thoughtseize, which they cannot cast, thankfully. We untap. We draw a Thought-Knot Seer, and regret not getting our singleton wastes under this Blood Moon. Play an Urza's Mine. Play Karn, Great Creator. And we're going to try the Ensnaring Bridge plan, which should at least stop the one creature from attacking. My opponent does play a lot of artifact removal, though, so the odds of this working is pretty low. We're going to have to top deck an Ugin, which, while possible, is not very likely. But that's, I think, what it's going to take to win here. If my opponent doesn't have artifact disruption, and they don't find it off of Magmatic Channeler, and they have to use Magmatic Channeler to try and find it, Karn will stay at 3 this turn, unless they have a Bolt. And if Karn stays at 3 by some miracle, we can get probably Walking Ballista or Sorceress Spyglass. Or we could go for Liquimetal Coating, because coating, destroying the swamp or preventing them from using the swamp gets rid of their ability to cast something like Angrath's Rampage, which is currently how they get out from under what we're locking them with. Opponent used their black mana to cast Seasoned Pyromancer, presumably because they have more Lightning Bolt. They discarded Lightning Bolt. So do they have another Lightning Bolt? They discarded Pithing Needle and Liliana. They play a Black Cleave Cliffs. They attack us, not Karn. Interesting. Okay. So, okay, they just had a Lightning Bolt for Karn. That makes sense then. And then in this case, we're going to take 4, even though it can't attack next turn. We untap. I'd like a Cyclonic Rift, really. Or an Ugin. Ugin is that thing that I said that if we top decked, we could actually win this game. Yeah, buddy! So we go ahead and -4 Ugin. Wipe the board clean. And if my opponent has another Lightning Bolt or a Dreadbore, then we're back to about even. The cool thing about Blast Zone being played under Blood Moon is that you can use it to take out tokens then, because it doesn't enter with the traditional 1 counter it enters on. Opponent cycles a Savai Triome and scoops it up because they didn't find an answer to an Ugin, and we win the match. Wow! That was lucky. That was very lucky. We should not have won that, but we did. And so I'll see you guys in round 2. And round 2, here we go. All right, right away. This hand is alright. We do have to choose between playing Talisman and holding up Repeal or Condescend. Alright, we're going to keep this. Let's see what our opponent does. Opponent starts Forest into an Elvish Reclaimer, so we're probably against a Green-White Titan, which is what we just played yesterday. We draw Cyclonic Rift. Now, the crappy thing about having Tolaria West and not an island is that I can't play Expedition Map on turn 1. But we still need to play Tolaria West because we have to have access to blue mana next turn. Or 2 mana at all next turn, really. So, let's hope they don't have Flagstones for their immediate start here. Okay, they play Cavern. They probably named Dryad here, really. Yep. So next turn they'll be able to get down the Dryad without any assistance. We untap. We draw Walking Ballista. Play an Urza's Mind. Now, Condescend isn't going to do anything here. Cyclonic Rift will. We could play Talisman and play Expedition Map. But I think what we actually need to do is, in response to... Or, not in response, but after Elvish Reclaimer activates, we're going to repeal Elvish Reclaimer. Unless they sack Cavern. If they sack Cavern, then, you know, we're not going to do anything. But if my opponent gets down Flagstones here, we just denied them access to green mana until they play Dryad and something else. So, maybe. The cool thing is we have Sundering Titan in this deck, and if we can get to where we can play Sundering Titan, we're definitely going to win the game because our opponent's going to have to sack all of their lands. Just all of them. Opponent's third land was a tap land and not a green land, so that's really good news for us. We draw a Snapcaster, so play Talisman, play Map, pass the turn. We'd really like to draw Tron lands here. So my opponent could play Dryad, and then if they have another land, they could replay Elvish Reclaimer. But we did set them back quite far. Okay, there's the Dryad. And a Bojuka Bog. It's not an untapped land, and that matters. So we untap. We draw River of Tears. Now, it doesn't do a whole lot, but I think what we do here is play out River of Tears, or we crack Map for a Tron piece, and then just Cyclonic Rift on our turn, because that forces my opponent to replay Dryad in order to replay Reclaimer, or do really anything else. And it kind of just buys us a little bit of time. Not a lot, but a little bit. They did get rid of our Repeal, so we can't just Snapcaster Repeal or anything. Yeah, so go ahead, crack Expedition Map. We will get a Power Plant. Play Power Plant. And then just Cyclonic Rift, Dryad, pass the turn. So opponent untaps. It's important to note that the turn we play River of Tears, the turn we play River of Tears, it produces black mana, because that's something I always forget. Alright, opponent plays Dryad. If we top deck a tower, it's just game over. They play a Flagstones. They sack Flagstones. They get a Temple Garden. And then they play Reclaimer. Alright. Come on. Tower. Tower one time. That's an island. Which is really not at all like a tower, but... Okay. Let's see. What can we do here? I think we play out an island and leave up Condescend for big mana or Snapcaster for Cyclonic Rift. If my opponent somehow gets like a big Valakut play going, we go for the Cyclonic Rift plan. If my opponent casts a Prime Time and we can Condescend it, we do that. So play an island and pass. Condescend can dig us towards tower, which is what we need. So opponent untaps. They go to their main phase. They go to combat. They attack for 2. Sure. We go down to 18. Opponent plays Valakut and shoots us for 3. I could respond to this, but I think I'm going to wait for Elvish Reclaimer activation. I would much rather Condescend if given the opportunity, because that manipulates our top deck. Cyclonic Rift doesn't do anything. I mean, it doesn't draw us a card. It does stuff. It just doesn't do exactly what we need. Opponent plays a Springbloom Druid. Now this I will Condescend. X3. Alright, and on top of our deck there's an Eldrazi Temple and a Thirst for Knowledge. Thirst for Knowledge... we could potentially get a tower off of, but then we'd only have 7 mana, which wouldn't be quite enough. So I'm actually going to put both of these to the bottom and hope to draw a tower. Maybe I should have kept the other one, but I guess we'll see. We draw Remand. Okay. Play River of Tears. Pass the turn. So in response to... well, I guess if my opponent Reclaimers for a Valakut, then we will Cyclonic Rift the Dryad back to hand using Snapcaster Mage. We gotta see what land they get, though, first. Interesting that they sacked Bojuka Bog and not Flagstones. I think that was a mistake. Selesnya Sanctuary. So this actually doesn't... they stacked the triggers wrong. We don't take any damage from this. My opponent has to pick up a land. It's probably Cavern, because they're going to try and put it on Titan. Is there anything we can do about this? So we don't take any damage from this Valakut activation. My opponent has 6 mana right now. They can play Cavern, they can name Titan, and then they're going to... that's going to be rough. So what we do is we Snapcaster Mage, Cyclonic Rift... and we put that Dryad back in their hand. So that way the Titan doesn't, like, kill us outright. Yeah, that's black mana right now. So we do this. And this way we take 1 less damage because River of Tears will make blue on our opponent's turn. Valakut doesn't do anything. But now, if my opponent plays Titan, even uncounterably, we don't just immediately die to them getting, like, 3 Valakuts and all their lands being mountains. And if they try and play the Dryad first, we can Remand the Dryad, unless they play Cavern on Dryad, then play Dryad. They name Giant, because why wouldn't you play Primeval Titan if given the choice, right? And they will be able to start making a bunch of zombies off Field of the Dead. But we have Ugin, and we'll be able to wipe the board completely clean. They'll still have a Field of the Dead active, but if they answer Ugin and then replay the Dryad, then we can Sundering Titan, and maybe that's enough to win? We'll see. This game is more interesting than I thought it would be. So, my opponent is not likely to play any other spells this turn, and they're not going to be able to activate Reclaimer. So, as terrible as this is, I'm just going to think twice using this Remand, because we need to draw land this turn. Okay, we drew Expedition Map, so I'm glad I didn't just top deck naturally. Expedition Map actually does it. That does get us to 8 mana for an Ugin. So my opponent can make a bunch of Field of the Dead tokens, but because we're holding Ugin, this is fine. This also means that if my opponent attacks with Elvish Reclaimer, we chump with Snapcaster 100%. They get Ghost Quarter and Windswept Teeth, but because they don't enter untapped, it doesn't matter. And because we're losing our whole board anyway, this is fine. I mean, if we can naturally draw Tower, that's better, but it lets us do even more things. Okay, we draw an Urza's Mine, so play map, crack map for Tower, play Tower. We might still be dead to Dryad ridiculous landfall shenanigans, because like if they play Dryad and they have another Valakut, then they can just like go. They can even just like crack Windswept Teeth and Ghost Quarter themselves, and I'm pretty sure that's enough damage to kill us. But we have to -6 Ugin. Ugin next turn dies no matter what. Because my opponent will be... they'll replay the Dryad, then they can just crack Windswept Teeth, get a landfall trigger, and that will kill Ugin. If they Ghost Quarter anything... If they Ghost Quarter the mine, we're fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, we can still play Sundering Titan next turn no matter what, so as long as we aren't dead this turn. Like, if my opponent can play Dryad Primeval Titan, it's irrelevant. We're just dead, but... If they don't, then there's a chance we survive, but... Knowing my opponent's deck, and even when I was playing this deck, I kind of noticed this, you never really don't have access to a Titan. So, we're probably just toast, but we'll see. At least this game was interesting. Like, regardless of what happens here. Alright, Ramanop Excavator. So they can play Flagstones, and that's like 1, 2, 3 landfall triggers. They just sack Ghost Quarter. Oh, they're going to replay Ghost Quarter, shoot Ugin, and Ghost Quarter us again. That's fine, because we can still play... Sundering Titan and take them off of, like, all of their lands. But the problem is, because they have Ramanop Excavator, they can just keep replaying them out of the grave. We have just enough basics to make this work. That is, if my opponent decides to Ghost Quarter us more. Which, they probably will on our draw step. So they shock Temple Garden, they get a Field of the Dead token, they get to Valakut us. But we do get to destroy 5 of their lands with Sundering Titan. If they Ghost Quarter their own Flagstones, that's 2 more landfalls. And then they could crack Windswept Teeth. Well, we draw. Opponent Ghost Quarters us on our upkeep. Sure, we should have just enough islands, but that doesn't matter. Honestly, but without another Ugin, I don't think we can win, and we only have the 1. So, players is mine. Okay, hang on. Wait a minute. So my opponent has 1 landfall trigger. It's going to put us to 9. They can do it in response. Next turn, they can't get up to enough lands for Field or Valakut, but they will... I guess maybe there's a chance we can win. But it relies on Sundering Titan here, for sure. The problem is my opponent gets to recover by playing 2 lands a turn out of their grave. The very tip of my nose itches, and it's a very odd feeling. Because it's like right on the tip. I have no idea why. My opponent floats green, white, white. They path their own Dryad. Okay. And then they can Eladamri's Call for a Dryad. So we actually take out, like, none of their lands. Oh, man. If that's the case, that's absurd. If they can just call for Dryad, we're dead. Oh. Good play, opponent, but that's really frustrating. Because we played, like, the card that's supposed to counter their deck, right? And just didn't. Oh, they get a Primeval Titan instead? So they have... We can only take them off of 1 land name. So we'll just take their Temple Gardens and I guess one of our own lands. Pass the turn. At least Primeval Titan doesn't immediately kill us, to the best of my knowledge. I would have thought that... Yeah, my opponent should have just been able to kill us instantaneously. Like, this does not kill us immediately. If my opponent had gotten the Dryad, they could have just played the Dryad and then fetched, and that would have killed us. I'm sure it's moot at this point, right? Because unless we top deck the other Cyclonic Rift, we can't even attack them for a turn, and we're taking a ridiculous amount of damage. I suppose we could get we could find Karn, and Karn would let us wish for Ensnaring Bridge, which would keep us alive for a little longer. Opponent plays Field of the Dead, Vesuvius Field of the Dead. So opponent has correctly identified that going wide will kill us, but I think the Dryad killed us this turn, I'm almost sure. Because it would have been fetch, get a land, 3 damage, attack, 4 damage, and then they could have just gotten Ghost Quarter out of the grave and Ghost Quartered their own flagstones. I'm pretty sure that did it. So they're giving us one more turn with this play. Not that it matters, but I think it's technically a mistake. But a lot of people forget that you can Ghost Quarter yourself, and maybe they don't have enough basics left in their deck because they do have a forest in the grave already. Something to think about. They replay Ghost Quarter. We draw Karn. So, play an Urza's Mine. Play Karn. Wish with Karn. Get Ensnaring Bridge. Play the bridge. This might actually let us get back to winning the game. Pass the turn. The problem is, as long as Ramanop Excavator is out there, it doesn't matter what we destroy. So opponent cracks Windswept Teeth, thins their deck. I don't think they have a way to... Oh, no, they do. They have... They generally play 1 Skyclave Apparition in the main. And they just draw the tutor for it, because... Why would they not? Why would they not have that? Why... You know, I hate it when I identify, I'm like, this is what is frustrating to me about Magic right now. I'm going to concede, just so I can talk about this during sideboarding, because it's over. But, like, the thing that frustrates me about Magic right now, the most, is when my opponent is playing a powerful strategy, and they make a mistake, because my opponent had the opportunity to kill us right there and didn't. They made a mistake. I identified a line where... Oh yeah, it's not super likely, but there's these set of circumstances. It's like a 5% chance. We draw the card we need. We wish for the card we need out of the sideboard. We have an answer to what's going on. And it happens. And I'm like elated because it's like, oh yeah, no, this like 1 in 20 chance of this weird circumstance occurring, and I'll be able to survive. And that's using your skill and knowledge as a Magic player to be able to adapt to the situation you're currently put in, rather than just do something powerful every single time you play the game. And it happened. And I did it. And my opponent, who has 1 card left in hand, has the answer to the answer just because their deck is powerful. Like, it's really frustrating because I can't punish my opponent's mistakes. When individual card power levels are that high, even if your opponent makes a mistake that equates to a time walk for you, you can't recover. What are you supposed to do? Like, I can't make up for the difference in power level with a skill gap. That's what frustrates me the most about Magic right now. That's it. That's I don't care about the 5-color mana base. I don't care about the broken combos. I cannot overcome variance with skill. That's the thing that frustrates me. And I'm not saying I'm a particularly skilled player. I'm not like pro tier. I was when I played Ad Nauseam, and the meta was actually like, my win rate was actually within pro percentages. But I was a one-trick pony that played Ad Nauseam. I wasn't that good at Magic or anything. Like, but I can't use my knowledge to overcome powerful plays. And that frustrates me to no end. So we're bringing in these. We're cutting probably Remands because my opponent has anti-counterspell stuff, so... That was really frustrating, and I'm legitimately on tilt right now. It's not even like I'm not acting, I'm not playing this up for the camera. I'm really just disappointed that in Modern Magic I can't overcome variance, even on a long shot, with skill and knowledge of the game. And that's sad. That's really, really disheartening. So, I guess it is what it is. Wizards is still going to print individually high power level cards that don't require skill to play, and when they finally get the gall to print an answer like Divine Gambit that can actually answer overcosted things at an undercosted rate, they're going to make it unplayable and give it a drawback that just literally doesn't matter anymore. So, alright. Opponent's Wooded Foothills. They crack Wooded Foothills, probably getting a Temple Garden untapped and playing Reclaimer. Wow, am I Psychic, or is my opponent's deck just so consistent at what it does, even though it plays 34 lands, that it might be considered a little broken? Like, do you know what the only recourse that I have for this meta situation is right now? The only recourse I have to this crappy metagame is by becoming part of the problem. If I become part of the meta percentage for these decks that are busted, and I push those numbers up for Wizards, they might go, oh, there's a problem. We have to do something about it. But that involves me just, like, playing the same decks that I hate over and over again, and not having fun. This might be fun for my opponent, but this isn't fun for me. And you could argue, well, Kano, you know, you're not playing the highest power level deck, and you're expecting to have some amount of win percentage, and so you're not giving yourself the ability to win. You're not taking the best advantage you have to win. Yeah, but I like... If I can lose 3 percentage points on victories and play interesting non-meta decks and compete, that's all I want. I don't need to have the most competitive deck to enjoy this. I want to be able to play something different now and again and not just get curb stomped out of the metagame every single time. Alright, that's enough ranting. I'll go back to gameplay commentary. So, we're going to thirst for knowledge here. We're still looking for Tron pieces. There's one. I could keep Engineered Explosives here. That's actually pretty reasonable, so I'm going to discard 2 cards. Condescend doesn't do much, and neither will Thought-Knot Seer. So we untap, we draw. If I don't draw Power Plant here, I'm going to play the Island. Or I could play a Redundant Tower, because I want my opponent to be discouraged from playing Ghost Quarter. So we're going to play Engineered Explosives. Just 1 colored mana in it. And then, in response to my opponent cracking Windswept Teeth, we're going to activate Engineered Explosives. Okay, my opponent did not. So now we have to crack Engineered Explosives on my opponent's upkeep. They will only be able to activate Reclaimer 1 time, rather than twice. They did not take the bait for the end step activation. So my opponent activates Elvish Reclaimer. They sack Temple Garden. Okay, my opponent gets a Cavern of Souls naming Giant. Paths their own guy, because that's a very powerful line they can use to mitigate the advantage I just gained with an answer. Then they will be able to play a land. I think discarding Condescend here was a mistake, because I would have been able to Spreading Seas on the Cavern. If I can draw Remand, there's a chance I can get back in this game, but I need... No, I don't need Remand. I need, like, Aether Gust. But we only play 1. Okay, we get an Expedition map. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 mana as well. Can I keep my opponent from playing Titan? No, because they have another green source. So what we do is we start with a Spreading Seas Hail Mary. Draw Talisman. That doesn't do it. Players is mine. Play Expedition map. And we basically have to hope that our opponent plays scared. There's no reason for them to. They should absolutely just jam Titan here. But we gotta hope that our opponent plays scared. Because if they can give us a turn, we can start carning their lands away. Yep. So discarding Condescend was a mistake, but I didn't account for the Spreading Seas. And when you're on tilt, you're gonna play wrong. That's just a fact of life. So, a piece of advice for people playing on MTGO right now, which is probably most of the people still playing Magic, if you're playing in a league like this, and you're getting to the point that I'm getting right now, psychologically, where there's just no other way to describe it than you're on tilt. You know, everything is bad, people are awful for playing terrible metagame decks and stuff like that. The only thing that you can do, which is afforded to you by Magic Online, is when you're playing a competitive league, as long as you're not playing in like a modern challenge or something like that, you have time between rounds. Get up, deep breath, take the dog for a walk, do something, then come back and continue playing. Because it's a game, and it should not affect you this much. It affects me this much because it's a really big hobby, I do content for it, and it's particularly frustrating for me right now because I am forced to play the game in a way that I don't enjoy. Which probably means I shouldn't be playing the game. I should be doing something else. I should record Binding of Isaac videos or just, you know, something else that's popular, a good roguelike. Work on my own video game that I started a project on. Like, do something else interesting. But that's not what's happening right now. I don't have the ability to do that. So, what can we do here? We have 12 mana, which means we can play Ugin and we can play Karn, and we're going to. Yep. Play Ugin. -6. And the biggest problem right now is we don't have an answer to that Field of the Dead. If we did, things would be fine and dandy. As long as our opponent doesn't have a way to do direct damage to Ugin this turn, we're probably going to be fine. And holding up Cyclonic Rift there might have been better. That might have been the play we needed to make. We're going to wish for Liquid Metal Coating, and then pass the turn. The type of frustration that I was expressing earlier about not being able to overcome variance with skill, it's one reason why I don't really play Ad Nauseam very much anymore. Because with Ad Nauseam, it's particularly easy for me to identify, you know, what line do I need to take to get the desired outcome, that sort of a thing. Opponent gets Dryad here, so if they have a Valakut, we're in trouble. But there's not a lot we can do about that. It's very easy to identify what needs to happen in order for us to win. And of course my opponent does have Valakut. So they can actually just Ghost Quarter themselves and kill both of our Planeswalkers. That sucks. So holding up Cyclonic Rift was the correct choice, because that way, if my opponent did play a Dryad and they did a landfall trigger, we would be able to negate the Valakut trigger at least the first time, then they could Ghost Quarter themselves. Which would leave us with Tron, but nothing to do with it. And of course, because they play 34 lands, they have multiple lands in hand. That is the expected outcome. It's not like this is some special circumstance. But yeah, no, I definitely made the wrong choice. I should have kept up Cyclonic Rift. I don't think it would have mattered that much, but it did matter. So, like, as far as like percentage points calculations, I think we still lose, even if I had, because my opponent would have been able to play another land. Yeah. I mean, I could top deck like Sundering Titan here, and that would matter, unless my opponent has the ability to do the whole path shenanigans again. But yeah, just individual card power levels are too high, which is one reason why I've not been able to play a deck like Battle of Wits like I used to. I used to play a blue-white control variant of Battle of Wits, where the idea was basically you find how many like Path to Exile effects a blue-white control deck runs, and then you run scaled up to 250 cards, the proportional number. So like if 60 card blue-white control plays 4 Path to Exiles, as a 250 card deck, you got to play 16 Path to Exile effects, which means you're playing, you know, you're playing 4 Ousts, 4 Paths, 4 Blessed Alliance, 4, you know, that sort of thing, until you get to 16, and you do that for each type of card. But that doesn't work anymore. Like, it's just not good, unfortunately. So let's play Thought-Knot and see what's in our opponent's hand. Actually, I could put Dryad back in their hand, and this gives me an opportunity to just yank Dryad, but if they have another one in hand, or if they have an Eladamri's Call, then it doesn't matter. Or if they have Primeval Titan, I mean, we're just gonna die anyway, but like... yeah, no, I've been too distracted. I'm not playing correctly. What I should have done here was I should have passed to my opponent's turn, let them do whatever they were gonna do, and as long as it didn't kill us, I should have cast Cyclonic Rift on their end step, overloaded, because I still had the mana to do that post-Ghost Quarter, then played Thought-Knot. That is what should have happened. Okay, so Dryad goes back to my opponent's hand, Thought-Knot's ability goes off finally. We get to take Dryad. They have an Explore, which is bad for us, because they're going to make a bunch of tokens. And I think that's both Cyclonic Rifts at this point. Was that this game? No, I still have another one. So we can answer the tokens one more time, but we don't have an answer for Field of the Dead. And unless we draw Field of Ruin, we kind of need Karn to get out of this as well. So like if I get Karn here, I could blow up Field of the Dead. Then I would have to top deck something I could use to answer all the tokens, which would be like Cyclonic Rift. Then I would have to start systematically blowing up their lands that produce their advantages. So Field of the Dead, Valakut. They would have to not draw another threat, which they do play a lot of lands. The ability for them to just top deck lands that are kind of irrelevant is pretty high at this point. Okay, opponent drew another Explorer. So my opponent might actually be able to make enough tokens to kill us in one turn, depending on what they drew here. If they found another Dryad, they can't play it until next turn, but that would be enough off the top to just kill us. Okay, we draw Repeal, which is a redraw here. So we go ahead and repeal a token. If my opponent kept Path and has another Path, like, okay, well, I guess we have a turn. And there's no reason to hold these cards in hand. It's not like my opponent has instant speed discard. So we're going to play out Talisman, and we're going to play out Liquid Metal Coating. Pass to our opponent. Opponent hits us for 8. We go down to 8. So we have to top deck Karn, get Ensnaring Bridge. Our opponent has to have no answer or way to kill us. Then we have to blow up Field of the Dead. Then we have to blow up Valakut. Then we have to destroy enough of their lands. Yeah. There's too many things that have to happen for us to win before our opponent wins. And unfortunately, they didn't happen this time. When they did happen last game, my opponent had it. So, alright. I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to finish this league. So, see you then. Alrighty, round 3. Here we go. I've taken a break. I've gotten some food. So let's hope for something better now, shall we? Alright, I'm gonna mulligan. Alright, it's not the most amazing hand, but I think this one will work. We'll keep, and I'm gonna put back Treasure Mage. We are going to start Power Plant Expedition Map. We're probably going to fetch an island with our Prismatic Vista, but there's no guarantee of that. Kind of depends on what we draw. If we draw another Tron land, we'll just activate map. Our opponent is playing probably Grixis or Rakdos Death Shadow. Alright. Prismatic Vista, crack Vista, get an island, and I'm going to play Talisman of Dominance. Pass the turn. If I had a Condescend or a Remand, I probably would just leave that up rather than play the Talisman here. Okay, it's mill. That sucks. But it's mill. So what can you do? And we do not have a big Eldrazi in the side, unfortunately. They surgical Urza's Tower. Alright. Well, the good news is potentially we can use Academy Ruins to keep ourselves out of getting milled out. Unless my opponent can exile the grave, has a surgical for the artifact we try and put back on top. Can mill us at instant speed, or a few other things. So it's not really actually that much protection. But next turn we can play a Thought-Knot Seer and hopefully stop our opponent from having another really good turn. Having knowledge of our opponent's hand is also going to be very, very good here. Okay, we draw Condescend. So, play Thought-Knot. Opponent has Fatal Push and Bloodchief's Thirst. So take Fatal Push, because that's the easier of the two spells to turn on. So my opponent needs double black in order to cast Bloodchief's Thirst. And we will have Condescend. No sense in Expedition mapping for a Tron piece anymore because my opponent did Surgical Tower. They fetch a land and hit us with Glimpse the Unthinkable. We untap. Do we want to put anything on top of the deck? Not right now. We draw Karn, Great Creator. Does Karn let us do anything broken that we otherwise would not be able to? We could play Trinisphere. I could also actually wish for Chalice and put it on 1. That would stop my opponent from being able to play Bloodchief's Thirst. But I can't do that this turn, unfortunately. I just have to leave up Condescend. So in that case, we're going to search our deck now. Well, it's unlikely our opponent has a another Archive Trap, play an island, go to combat, and attack for 4. If we can stop our opponent from casting their removal spell here, and they have no other follow-ups, we actually have a clock that's fast enough to win this game. Okay, opponent plays their island. They cast Blood Chief's Thirst, so we Condescend. We're basically looking to keep another counterspell if possible. Keep Thought-Knot. We untap. Cast Thought-Knot. Take Surgical. Opponent has no cards in hand. Hit them for 4. So opponent can put Lurrus in their hand, cast one spell that isn't Archive Trap. They don't have a fetch land for Fatal Push, and they die to Thought-Knot Seers. Nice. So, for mill, I think we actually want the creature removal more than we want the remands. The creature removal is good versus, like, crabs and stuff. A lot of their spells are cheap enough that remand isn't going to matter that much. Well, it's a fast Tron hand, but with no real follow-up. Yeah, I think versus mill, I have to mulligan this. Alright, turn 3 Thought-Knot Seer. Put back Snapcaster. Engineered Explosives is good if we draw an island or a blue source. Okay. Opponent cracks Polluted Delta, gets a Watery Grave into a Hedron Crab. We draw an island, so play an island, play Engineered Explosives on 1, pass the turn. Opponent mills us for 3. Cracks Polluted Delta, mills us for 3. Playing Watery Grave tapped, interesting. Okay. We draw a Repeal. So we could play a land and then crack Explosives. We don't want to put Hedron Crab back in their hand, and we really don't want them to untap with it. So we're going to go ahead and just do this. Pass the turn. Next turn we can play Thought-Knot Seer. Unless my opponent mills it and Surgicals it. Okay, opponent plays a Field of Ruin. They put Lurrus into their hand. We untap and draw Dismember. Play Thought-Knot Seer. Take a look at our opponent's 6-card hand. Double Archive Trap, Fatal Push, Lurrus, Visions. Okay, well we have to take Fatal Push here. Double Archive Trap sucks a lot, but I think I actually have to let my opponent have that mill. They can field us and trap us twice. Okay, so they play their other field. They activate field, we get an island. But the only way we can compete with what our opponent is doing is by beating down with this Thought-Knot Seer. So my opponent can trap us twice and then Ancestral Recall. Apparently they only needed to trap us once to do that. So if they have a Fatal Push, we're in trouble. Okay, second Archive Trap. Second Visions of Beyond. Yeah, that's pretty good. So I've heard. We draw Tolaria West. Don't really want to search my library, and I don't really think there's any 0-drops we want to get right now. I think we're better off playing Field and attacking. Yeah. Alright, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They have 8 cards in hand again. Jeez. I mean, Ancestral Recall is a pretty good card, right? Even if you only get to play it, like, 1 out of every 3 games you play. Still pretty good, I hear. Opponent fetches up a Snow-Covered Swamp. Fatal pushes Thought-Knot, so opponent gets to draw. Okay. Glimpse the Unthinkable. We're down to 7 cards in deck. Mesmeric Orb. I'm going to go ahead and repeal that. Because I still have to try and draw a way to win. Play Thought-Knot Seer. So we know they're holding Lurrus. What else? Another Visions of Beyond. So we're dead no matter what we take here. If we take Visions, they just play Mesmeric Orb, we untap and lose. If we take Mesmeric Orb, they play Lurrus, play Crab, play land out of hand, crack field, we lose. So, unfortunately our opponent has us. That's fine. I don't mind losing a mill, even if it's a little bit silly, but... Alright. Alright, I would like to play first. This is another slow hand with no counter spells, but we have Karn and we can accelerate into him. So I think the plan is to do that. I don't really want to mulligan this. So we're going to start Tolaria West, pass the turn. Our opponent plays an island, plays a crab. Okay. So we can either... I think we gotta kill the crab. I think that's what's happening here. If my opponent has a second crab and a fetch land, then we halved the damage we're taking here, but... Okay, opponent plays a fetch land, no second crab. They get a watery grave. Glimpse the unthinkable. Well, we get milled a bunch. Play an island. Play a talisman. Pass the turn. We can repeal something that costs 1. Like a crab, as an example. Okay, opponent mills us for 3. Nothing we can do about that. And our opponent plays a Maddening Cacophony. Repeal the crab. We draw Thought-Knot. Opponent mills us for 8. We untap and draw Tower. Play Tower. Now the question is... We could play Karn and Wish for like a Trinisphere. I think we wait until next turn. I think we start with a Thought-Knot. Because if our opponent has something that we desperately need to answer, or if they're out of gas, yeah, we're going to take the crab. They can Fatal Push Thought-Knot Seer. That doesn't bother me. Opponent plays a land, puts a Lurrus into their hand. So they're holding Flooded Strand, Fatal Push Lurrus. We draw Sundering Titan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, Prismatic Vista. Get an island. Play Karn. Wish with Karn. Get Liquimetal Coating. I could have put in Chalice on 1 as well. That may have actually been better there. Hit our opponent for 4. But by doing this, we make our opponent choose between casting Fatal Push or casting Lurrus. And if we blow up a land with Karn, we're going to blow up Dark Slick Shores, and the off chance we somehow get to cast a Sundering Titan. Opponent shocks a Watery Grave. Plays Lurrus. Then they probably replay a crab. Alright. We untap. We draw an island. So we can get a Walking Ballista here. We have 6/7 mana. We're not blowing up a land if we do that. But I think that's okay. Go to combat. Attack for 4. Opponent takes it and goes to 6. We got a Wish. We have nothing in our exile zone. Yeah, I think it's just gotta be Walking Ballista. We know our opponent is not holding a fetch land, or if they are, they top decked it. Take Walking Ballista. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can only kill one thing, and it needs to be Lurrus. Stop on my opponent's upkeep. Shut off Dark Slick Shores. And we needed to kill on our turn because our opponent would be able to use Fatal Push otherwise. I mean, they still can, and we shouldn't be F6'd. Because they could Fatal Push Walking Ballista. They play Dark Slick Shores, they mill us for 3. Talisman of Dominance, Walking Ballista to the grave. They Fatal Push Walking Ballista, so we ping them for 1. They're holding 1 unknown card. Alright, we untap. We draw Field. So we can play Sundering Titan. Go to combat. Attack for 4. Opponent takes 4 and goes to 1. They're very disciplined about that crab. So we blow up Dark Slick Shores, play field. It might be better to try and Thirst for Knowledge for a counterspell, but we're going to go with the Mana Denial play. Plus, we can attack for lethal past a blocker next turn. It's difficult for them to have 21 mil on 2 cards. And I think them having a land there means we win. They could Visions of Beyond into, like, 2 really good mill spells on 3 mana, but opponent didn't have it, and we got there. Sweet. I will see you guys in round 4. Alrighty, round 4, here we go. So, turn 3 Tron, nothing to play with it, but we do have an island and a Remand along the way, so we're going to keep. Opponent starts Steam Vents tapped. We draw an Eldrazi Temple, so play Urza's Mine, Expedition Map. Pass the turn. Opponent plays an island into a Goblin Electromancer, so we're looking at Storm, which is not a good matchup for us. At the very least, we have some chance of success here with remands and stuff, but it's really not looking good for us. Opponent opts. Okay. So we can either map for Power Plant or we can map for an island. I think we map for an island. We untap. We draw Chalice. If my opponent has Remand, Chalice probably gets us, but Chalice on 1 is our absolute best way to fight what our opponent is doing. I think Chalice on 2 is stronger, but it shuts off our own stuff. They basically have to have Remand and go off next turn, otherwise they're probably out. I don't think they can beat a Chalice on 1. Because they don't main deck Wipe Away, they generally main deck Repeal, and Repeal targeting Chalice is always on 1. You can't overpay for Repeal, unfortunately. I guess my opponent could just have triple Ritual into Gifts. This might still get us. They have 5 open mana. Gosh. Manamorphose, Pyretic Ritual, Desperate Ritual, so we need to limit the overall number of cards they can draw and their storm count. So we're going to dump Manamorphose and Desperate Ritual. They might actually still just have us here. That would be insane. And yeah, if that's the case, then there's not a lot we can do about it. They can just cast a bunch of rituals, and then even if we dump Remand and Grape Shot, they just go Grape Shot, Remand, Grape Shot. Wow. Yeah, alright, you got us. There's literally nothing I could do about that. That's ridiculous. So bring in some Dismembers. Probably drop the Remands. Keep Tormod's Crypt in. I could bring in the other Chalice and just have it in the main deck, but I mean, fat lot of good that really did for us. The other option is like main decking a Trinisphere here, which I could maybe make work, but I don't know. I don't like sideboarding in the silver Karn bullets. Alright, so we get to be on the play for game 2. Condescend Repeal is kind of nice. We do have access to double blue, which will be good. I don't think one counterspell is going to beat our opponent, but mulliganing with this deck has not been a winning proposition thus far. So play an Urza's Tower, pass the turn. We're not going to play Talisman of Dominance until at least next turn. Okay, we get an Urza's Mine. Play Urza's Mine. Pass the turn. Opponent plays a Mountain. And passes. We untap. And Tron assembled. Play Talisman so that we have multiple blue mana as well. That is a heartening moment. We could repeal a resolved Electromancer now. My opponent has a Braid for the Talisman of Dominance. Okay, we're going to let that go. Okay, opponent plays a Riverglide Pathway. We untap and draw Thought-Knot Seer. Play an island. Play Thought-Knot. Let's take a look at their hand and exile something. So if my opponent were to cast Gifts in response, I think I'd have to Condescend here. Alright. Well, that worked in our favor. We run it back now. We could still bring in Spatial Contortion, as it does kill both their cost reduction creatures, but at the same time, it being 2 mana over Dismember being 1 makes a huge difference. This is very similar to our last hand, except we are on the draw, which makes it worse. We're gonna try. There is some outside chance this works. If we draw an island, there is a much greater chance this works. Because if we can get down map on turn 1, that's going to make all the difference. But we need to play Tolaria West turn 1 because we need access to blue on turn 2. More than we need to play map on turn 1. Alright. Play the Tolaria West, pass the turn. Opponent plays a Shivan Reef. We draw a Thought-Knot. Play Power Plant, pass the turn. So if my opponent plays, like, land cost reducer into Ritual, we Condescend to the Ritual, untap, and dismember the, the cost reducer. They shock Steam Vents. Alright. We untap, we draw a Karn. So we can either leave up Condescend for 2, Condescend for 1, and Dismember, or play Expedition Map and leave up Condescend or Dismember. I think we need to try and sneak Expedition Map in right now. If my opponent abrades it, I can't crack it. As much as I would love to. Alright, opponent untaps. They play an island. Desperate Ritual up to 5. Manamorphose. Surprised they didn't go... I guess they didn't go for the Splice because they were worried about Condescend +1. Empty the Warrens. Okay. It's a lot of tokens, but that's not the end of the game. Okay, get Tower. Untap. We draw another Thought-Knot. So, play Tower. Play Thought-Knot. If my opponent has Remand, we would Condescend to the Remand. They have Mystical Dispute, Empty the Warrens, and Grape Shot. So they can't cast Mystical Dispute. We're going to take Grape Shot from. Then we are going to play Thought-Knot Seer. And then we're going to take Empty the Warrens. Because we really don't care if they just have Mystical. We have 2 creatures that are very large and difficult for our opponent to swing through. They top deck a Serum Visions, and they cast it. So next turn, we can play Karn through a Mystical Dispute. They play a tap land. Sure. They do not attack. We draw another Thought-Knot Seer. What is in our sideboard? I put Engineered Explosives in our sideboard. Oh, man. Oh, this is awesome. Okay, so, play Field of Ruin. Play Karn. Opponent is, like, they should Mystical Dispute, because we... Okay, cool. They give up. Oh, we beat Storm, but only barely. Only barely did we beat Storm. I'm actually going to restart the client, and then I'll play round 4. Or round 5, excuse me. Alrighty, round 5, here we go. I would like to play first. This is a good blue Tron hand, we'll keep. Opponent is on a Yorion deck. It is not Battle of Wits, though. They're only playing 80 cards. Opponent starts Ghost Quarter into an Aether Vial, so they are some kind of Death and Taxes. We draw a field, play an island, and honestly, I'm just going to repeal Aether Vial. Pass the turn. If they kept a hand that was Colorless Land Aether Vial, this is going to put them back a long way. They play a Skyclave Cleric as a tap land into an Aether Vial again. We draw an island, play Urza's Tower, pass the turn, leave up Condescend. So this way, if my opponent wants to try and strip mine us with a, like, Leon and Arbiter Ghost Quarter, we can counter it. They can still Ghost Quarter us, we can't stop that. Skyclave Cleric. I'm going to counter this just to try and scry into something. I'm also trying to, like, bait the Ghost Quarter now, so that it's just a take us off of Tron instead of completely strip mine us. Get an island. We did put our opponent back quite a bit of mana, so we're almost playing a tempo game right now. Condescend on the bottom, Urza's Mine on top. If they don't have a 1-drop and we can resolve Karn Great Creator, we are sitting pretty. Nice. Okay, so now we need to get probably Liquid Metal Coating. Pass the turn. And depending on what our opponent plays here, we're either going to play out Thought-Knot Seer or we're going to play out Coating. They shouldn't have a way to directly deal with Karn unless they have a land and a Skyclave Apparition in hand, which is pretty low odds considering they are playing a Yorion deck, though it's not impossible. They're like, the high side of their hand means we would instantly lose. The low side of their hand means we're fine. Opponent may just activate Tech Edge. They do. That's really good for us. Like, absurdly good for us. Okay, in that case, what we're going to do is play an island, play Coating, and blow up a land. Because now they can no longer play Skyclave Apparition. And the game is over. Whew! Alright, so we're going to bring in Spatial Contortion, Double Dismember. We're going to drop Tormod's Crypt. Grave Hate against our opponent is almost completely irrelevant. Chalice is still somewhat good, putting it on 1. Repeal is going to be good. Remand, I think, is what we're taking out here. Because I think Condescend is going to be a little bit better. Aether Gust doesn't hit anything. Spreading Seas is kind of meh. Our opponent could also still be playing blue. They might be blue-white Yorion instead of just mono-white. It is possible. Alright, well, we kind of have to hope that our opponent doesn't have a Aether Vial opener, but they're Yorion, so what are the odds? 100%, obviously. I mean, I'm not going to get upset about, like, natural Tron. And I'm not above, depending on what our opponent does here, if they kept the hand just off the strength of Aether Vial, I would not be above Cyclonic Rifting. Okay, they get Sword of Fire and Ice. We get an Expedition map. So the question is, do we Cyclonic Rift Stoneforge to prevent our opponent from putting a sword into play? I think we actually Cyclonic Rift Aether Vial. My logic here is, if they waste their turn putting sword into play and don't have another land, we're just going to be good to go. Now my opponent has to make the decision of whether or not to keep us off of Tron as hard as possible with Field. That's what lost them the game the first time around. So they replay Aether Vial, we draw Remand, we'll play Power Plant, Expedition Map, leave up Remand. So my opponent is going to put Sword into play on their end step. Then they have to choose between Field and Activation unless they have another land. And if they field us, we still get the land that they field. I might still be playing this incorrectly, though. We'll see. If my opponent does not field us... Okay, it looks like they don't have another land, so they're going to have to activate Field. They're trying to wait for us to Expedition Map, or at least for our draw step. And they didn't do it. And we get to play a Sundering Titan. We lose our blue source, but our opponent has to Field of Ruin. Yeah, that gives us a blue source. We're cool with this. Okay. Oh, does my opponent have a path? If they have a path here, it's actually kind of punishing. Sure, we will use Path's ability, get another island. Sundering Titan, get to take out another land. Done. And we can still get... unless my opponent has a Leonin Arbiter, we can still get a tower off of Expedition Map. They can't equip the sword. They don't have the mana. Oh, I would love to draw Karn here. Oh, I would love to draw Karn here, please. Thought-Knot Seer. So my opponent can vial in a 2-drop, which means they could have Leonin Arbiter. So if I activate Map, and my opponent has Arbiter, however low of a chance it is, we could be screwed. So the plan is to play Thought-Knot Seer. This does give my opponent the ability to potentially draw Skyclave Apparition, another Path to Exile. They have Winds of Abandon, Skyclave Apparition, Stoneforge Mystic, and Restoration. So we need to take Skyclave Apparition from them, correct? That forces them to use Winds of Abandon. They can vial in Stoneforge. They can't cast Winds of Abandon, actually, because they don't have enough mana. They have to top deck mana for that. And then they have to choose between that and Equip Sword. So we definitely take Skyclave Apparition. These are the cards in their hand. Pass the turn. Next turn we can get a tower. play a big Ballista, shoot down all their guys, and potentially leave up Remand if they need to play Winds of Abandon here. Okay, they Winds of Abandon, we get an Island. They draw a card. They cannot Vial in Stoneforge Mystic, and they didn't do it on our end step. We untap, we draw Wastes. Crack Map. Ooh, I could get Blast Zone, take out their Vials, or I can get Tower. If I take out their Vials, they're a long way from really successfully doing anything, actually. Tower lets me keep them off of playing like any creatures that can equip that Sword of Fire and Ice, but Blast Zone lets me answer... Let's see. My opponent's going to start drawing 2 cards a turn, which might negate the mana advantage we currently have. The alternative... Yeah, I think we get the Tower. Blast Zone is super tempting here, but just playing the biggest, baddest Ballista we can right now is probably the way to go. They have to... Like, they have to do something about this. And we are going to kill this now, because it prevents them from vialing in the one or the other Stoneforge they have and just immediately activating to put another equipment on board. They can take Aether Vial up to 4. If we draw another Expedition map, we can just take out the Vials. I think letting my opponent draw 2 cards a turn was out of the question. So my opponent gets to search their deck. That's fine. They fail to find. 2 mana they equip. They get to Vial in Restoration Angel now. If I attempt to ping it down, they just flicker. I can put 2 counters on it and hold up Remand next turn, which makes it big enough that it can block. Opponent plays Field. They can't activate this turn. Their hand is Resto, 1 unknown. We untap. Draw an Engineered Explosives, which we can put on 1, immediately crack. Yeah, that seems good. Play the old EE. Play Wastes. Blow up our opponent's Aether Vials. So opponent Vials in Restoration Angel. Flickering Stoneforge. They choose not to do it. Blow up all the 1-drops. Put a counter on Ballista. Put a counter on Ballista. Pass the turn. The only problem is we still have to do this. We don't have quite enough mana to leave up Remand as well. We have no idea what's in our opponent's hand. If they try and move the equipment to Restoration Angel, we just ping down the Restoration Angel and give up on Ballista. But then they get to keep it on Stoneforge if they do that. Interesting that they would pay the life with Silent Clearing. We don't have a choice. We have to fizzle this equip, but that means it stays on Stoneforge Mystic. So my opponent gets to keep it on Stoneforge. They hit us for 3, shoot us for 2 more, and get to draw. But this means they have another Aether Vial. Unbelievable. My opponent, I think what they should have done is left up Tech Edge, because that way if they drew a land, they could take us off of Tron. Now we have the opportunity to play a huge Tron threat if we draw it. And I'm kind of not above remanding a cheap spell like a Mana Rock of mine to draw something. Well, I can get Blast Zone. So play map. Crack map. I could get Academy Ruins. We could put Walking Ballista on top of the deck. I can get Blast Zone and try and blow up the Stoneforge Mystic, or the Sword. Blast Zone has a lesser chance of working. Tolaria West, do we have any 0-drops left in the deck we'd want to tutor? Not really. I could also just get a redundant tower and then try and draw mine or something again. Gonna go with Blast Zone. Play Blast Zone. Pass the turn. So we'll see what our opponent does. The problem is not having an answer for that sword right now. Opponent draws a Ghost Quarter. They go to combat. They attack for 3. We take it, go down to 9, they shoot us, they draw a card. We want them to play something and leave up like Ghost Quarter for Blast Zone, just so we can remand it. They're going to field our tower. Is it worth blowing up the Aether Vial? No. I'm going to say that it is. Destroy Aether Vial. Opponent is going to activate Vial. Do they have a 1-drop? That would be super punishing. Well, why would you Vial in a 1-drop into Blast Zone? Okay, sure. That seemed questionable, actually. Opponent gets a Plains. Passes. Alright, we gotta draw something. Anything here, please. Thought-Knot Seer. That counts. Thought-Knot Seer. Take a look at our opponent's hand. Skyclave Apparition. Yoink. They have Tech Edge left. If they Ghost Quarter us even once, we don't have the mana to do anything else. We don't have any more basics we can fetch up. So opponent plays Tech Edge. They can't attack into this. They probably put Yorion in their hand. They sack Silent Clearing to draw. They Tech Edge us, sure. They go to combat and pass. We untap. Draw Gemstone Caverns. Play Caverns. Pass the turn. Oh, alright. Opponent's on low mana, but so are we. This is really interesting. I'm enjoying this. We are slightly advantaged here. But only slightly. Opponent plays a Plains. We have no idea what's in their hand. They probably put Yorion in their hand this turn, leaving up like Ghost Quarter. That's what they do, okay. Well, we can remand a Yorion next turn. They can't attack. Alright, we untap. We draw Snapcaster Mage. We can Snapcaster Cyclonic Rift, but not yet. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They want to cast Yorion this turn. They play another Ghost Quarter. They could take us completely off of blue, and we might be screwed. Opponent plays Leonin Arbiter. Tapping both of the white mana. Remand. We draw Thirst. Thirst is good, because it gives us the opportunity to draw lands. Oh, please, opponent, don't find out that we've used all our basics. I just need you to not. Okay, they Tech Edge. We're going to Thirst in response. We are going to discard an artifact and bluff that we have more basics. We untap. We draw a Repeal. Play an Urza's Tower. Go to combat and pass. Oh man, this is so stressful. Leonin Arbiter. Remand. We get a Prismatic Vista. Opponent plays Thalia. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. Repeal Thalia. We draw Chalice. Untap. We draw Field. I could play Chalice on 2, and that would shut off Arbiter, and it would shut off Thalia. They wouldn't be able to cast it. They've used like all of their Aether Vials. The problem is we need to get Stoneforge in their hand first, if at all possible. And we can't, because we can't repeal Stoneforge. So the best play this turn... Oh, what do we do? Play Tower. We're not fielding here. We can't let our opponent know that we don't have any basics left. We can Snapcaster Thirst to draw a bunch of cards. We can Snapcaster Cyclonic Rift, but we can't overload it. We could Snap Remand, but that doesn't really do anything. We can Snapcaster Repeal if our opponent plays Thalia or Arbiter. We could actually repeal the Sword of Fire and Ice. That is somewhat reasonable. It's going to be some kind of Snapcaster play, for sure. I'm just not sure which one the best is, and I want to see how my opponent starts, what they do. Because if they cast like Yorion here, we would remand it. Okay, opponent plays Leonin Arbiter. And they're going to play Thalia. Snapcaster Mage. Thirst for Knowledge, because we really just need to hit a, like, Ugin. Discard an artifact. It is a Chalice. Thalia enters the battlefield. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. Alright, untap. If we can draw a mine, we can Treasure Mage for Wurmcoil, or we can get Karn. What can we get with Karn that is 4 mana or less that works here? Liquimetal Coating. Liquimetal Coating here would be pretty good. Play Field. Karn is 5, coding would be 3, that's perfect. And unless they top deck a land or are holding a land, they're not going to be able to play Yorion. They won't be able to re-equip stuff, get coding, play coding. Pass to our opponent's turn, stop on their upkeep, shut off a Ghost Quarter, making them really think about cracking it now. I've got a sense they want to play this Yorion. They're going to Ghost Quarter our Field of Ruin. We can't search. But they don't know we don't have more basics, that's the thing. Okay. Because they just think we can't pay for Arbiter. Not that we wouldn't. So what kind of Madman Tron player would keep playing in the face of this many strip mines? Archon of Emeria. You got it. Opponent does not attack. We untap. We can cast exactly 1 spell this turn, and it needs to be a good one. My opponent cannot interact with our mana base. We can wish for a Sundering Titan. We have all the mana we could want this turn. We could dismember Archon first. If we dismember Archon first, we can blow up another land with Karn, keeping Karn alive. Then play Treasure Mage, get Wurmcoil, then figure out how to deal with Giver of Runes. So start with Dismember. Oh, hang on. First, play Urza. Even though it enters tapped, that's fine. Dismember Archon. Kill Ghost Quarter. Treasure Mage. We can't search. We can't search because I didn't pay for Arbiter. Oh, that's horrible. Oh, no. Kato, you moron. You just had to punt this away, didn't you? Well, we have Condescend. Save me, counter spells. I knew I was going to mess that up somewhere. Alright. Opponent gives this protection from... Doesn't matter, it kills us. Oh, that killed us even if I got Wurmcoil. I guess that wasn't really a punt, because we didn't really have a chance. Maybe I actually had to animate the sword to get out of this? Could that have been the thing? Oh, my opponent gave protection from the wrong color. They punted too! Nice. So we untap. We draw. River of Tears. Oh, okay, we can do this. We absolutely can do this. Now that my opponent punted and we punted. We're up to punt again, right? Okay, so I can wish for Ensnaring Bridge. My opponent would have to... Or I could get like a really big Walking Ballista, because I have a Walking Ballista on the side. That's just better, right? Just getting a huge Walking Ballista and killing their stuff, because this is tapped. There's no way it's not better. Get Walking Ballista, play River of Tears, because it actually produces mana. Yes! Oh, man. I haven't seen that many turnovers since that Bills game that not that long ago, where they just like got the ball from, what was it, the Steelers, like every 3 seconds. Oh man, we 4-1'd with Tron. And that is our lesson today in punt recovery. If you feel yourself going on tilt, no matter how justified your feelings are, take a deep breath, get up from the table, walk away, come back, and get ready to play Magic and enjoy your hobby. Let's open up our treasure chest. Dave, I hope that this was a roller coaster ride that you enjoyed. Let's go ahead and open them. First treasure chest, we get 25 play points and a Masako the Humorless. Creatures you control can block as though they were untapped. Flash. Kind of a cool combat trick. Not very good, but cool. Treasure chest number 2. We get 5 play points, a Jeweled Lotus Treasure Avatar, a Promo Hull Breacher. That's gotta be worth something. That's gotta be worth something. Hang on a moment. What one's the art? One is the art. Ooh, this is 70 tickets. We just hit the lottery. Oh man. Hang on. I'm posting this one in the Discord. I mean that MS Paint just casual 70 tickets, everybody. Yep. Sorry, I know. I know. Alright. And then we still have 3 more to open. Treasure chest number 1, or number 3. Get an Avatar for Blim and a Cold-Eyed Selkie, another 25 play points. Treasure chest number 4, we get 85 play points and a Martial Coup. And treasure chest number 5, we get a 10 play points and Colostria Highborn. Man, things really looked and felt bleak there for a minute. And I'm really glad that I ended up handling it the way that I did. Getting the treasure chest and the 4-1 was very nice on top of that. I think we were able to play well because I took a break. And had I kept just like trying to push and get the tournament over with, I would not have done that well. I probably would have won forward and just completely scrubbed out at that point because at the end of that round 2, I was not having a good time at all. But all in all, I'm pretty satisfied with how the deck performed. We had some really interesting games post the Green-White Titan matchup. The only real complaint that I have, which was evident from Game 1 all the way to Game 15, which was this deck needs 5 islands. Needs 5 islands. Absolutely needs 5 islands. I don't think we need Prismatic Vista in this list at all. You can argue that in a Blood Moon heavy meta, it's probably correct if you're playing Thought-Knot Seers to have a Prismatic Vista to go get the wastes. That is a completely reasonable line, and we didn't run into anybody really playing Blood Moon that mattered to us. I would probably drop the River of Tears for an island, or the Gemstone Caverns for an island. Just one of these lands we need to drop for an island, and really that's my only complaint with this list. I think the other splits on threats are nice. We got a little bit lucky top decking. I think it was an Ugin, and at least one other time we top decked a Sundering Titan right when we needed to. I like the double repeal. Double repeal is good. Single Cyclonic Rift as a third bounce spell, I think it's great. Double Cyclonic Rift would be too much. I'm never a huge fan of Treasure Mage, especially in this deck, because it only has 2 targets. And even though I punted with it, I think it's still an okay include. Academy Ruins without the Mindslaver lock is kind of questionable, but the Mindslaver lock has never been a valid win condition on Moto, and it's not really a valid win condition right now either because it requires so much mana. It necessitates that you assemble Tron to win the game that way. Even though it's a powerful way to win the game, I don't think it's reasonable to ever assume that you'll be able to do that. Not like it used to be. All in all, I think the list is really solid. Dave, thanks for sharing this. Thanks for requesting it. Let me know if you guys liked the video. Leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined. Remember, you can follow me on Twitch. Same username over there as you find me on here. I stream Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, though the last few have been earlier. We've been having some really good streams lately. Last stream we did a whole bunch of Modern Brewing, which was fun, because normally I play a bunch of Vintage Cube, and that's not a thing right now. Probably going to do that for the next stream as well. And yeah, I want you guys to know that you're all wonderful human beings. I really appreciate your support. Helps through the tough times like this, talking to you guys in the Discord. And it helps me, keep on track when I start to get on tilt. Very glad for the Moto League format. I'm glad I can get up in between rounds, take a breather, walk the dog, that sort of a thing, come back and get ready to go. Because couldn't have done it without it. So that's enough rambling from me. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!